Hello, loves. Welcome to another episode of Spiritual Grit. How are you on this gorgeous day? I hope wherever you are feeling pretty fantastic. Also, I hope you're liking the new intro music because I'm really digging it. And yeah, I hope you're having as much fun with this podcast as I am. Spiritual Grit is something that just feels like these two areas of interest, for lack of a better way of saying it, coming together and rubbing up against each other, spirituality and activism. And it's not often that we hear about both of them coming together and intersecting. It feels like one is separate from the other. It's like, how can you be an activist and a spiritualist? Because we have this impression that spirituality is more passive. It's like you just sit down and meditate, and activism is very much engaged with the physical world, where, you know what? That is not correct. And I'm here to talk a little bit about that today because something happened in a community that I'm part of, and there was a real test of those two things coming together. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But first, we're going to turn to Hafez and our Sufi mystic poet as our I guess our invocator is like an invocation of spirit to come into our space today. And so today's poem is called A Root in Each Act and Creature. The sun's eyes are painting fields again. Its lashes with expert strokes are sweeping across the land. A great palette of light has embraced this earth. Hafez, if just a little clay and water mixed in his bowl can yield such exquisite scents, sights, music, and whirling forms. What unspeakable wonders must await with the commencement of unfolding of the infinite number of petals that are the soul. What excitement will renew your body when we all begin to see that his heart resides in everything. God has a root in each act and creature that he draws his mysterious divine life from. His eyes are painting fields again. The beloved, with his own hands, is tending, raising like a precious child, himself in you. Ooh, there's a lot in there. Wow. I don't know if I've read this poem in quite some time. So it's so great that this poem has come forward today, thinking about the different layers. So we've got the divine. Well, first we've got the sun. The sun's eyes are painting fields again. And we've got this beautiful landscape of nature that Hafez describes, and how there is divinity in that, and how magnificent God's creation is, and how simple. And so how simple. He says, a little clay and water mixed in his bowl can yield such exquisite scents, sights, music, and whirling forms, right? And so thinking about how there is divine in everything, in nature, and all that we see. And then it goes to say, God has a root in each act and creature that he draws his mysterious life force from, right? So he has root in each of us, and that is in our divine spirit, in our divine light. You know, namaste, as I say at the end of every episode, the divine light in me bows to the divine light in you, and that is God. We are all part of God. And I've said this in time and again, that to think of ourselves as the rays of the sun. We are not the sun individually. We are part of the sun. The source of the sun is at its center, and we radiate out from that. And so we are both part of the sun and sort of an extension of the sun. And so that's how I like to think of it. But the last stanza, the beloved with his own hands is tending, raising like a precious child himself in you. And so what comes to mind is you've got the nature image, and then he's tending like a garden. He's tending the garden, but then the garden, the blossom, the flower, the plant is not just a plant, it's a child. It's the child that is within you. And that child is seen as God, as your inner child. It's just so many layers. It's so rich. And I'm going to have to earmark this poem and look at it again just to kind of digest that, because there's so many layers between nature and landscape and the miracle of life and the divinity in all of that, and how we as humans are part of that landscape, even though more often than not, we forget that. We forget that we are part of the design of life, of the world, the planet, the universe. We are all part of it. We're not separate. We're not better. We're not higher or lower. But we forget that because our egos, our conscious minds, like to play with us, like to test us, like to say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna let you believe that you are better than the plants because you have logical thinking. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to let you think that. Meanwhile, the plants know when to bloom, when to rest, when to die, when to be reborn. I mean, they know all that. And we resist that, don't we? I just think about how many of us resist that cycle of life. Thinking about like anti-aging creams, for example, thinking about how a lot of us are afraid of death and we tend to ignore our own mortality. We ignore the seasons of our life. As we're aging, it's like, no, I used to be able to do that. And I still can do that. I insist that I can still do that thing, whatever it is. And maybe you can with practice, but because our physical bodies age with time, then we need to be kind to ourselves and understand that, maybe we can train a little bit more to do the thing. Like, I'm specifically thinking about a friend of mine who I recently found out was a skateboarder when she was in high school. Like she was a skater girl. And I was so excited about that because my youngest is into skateboarding right now. And so I was like, oh my God, can you teach her some stuff? She's like, no, I cannot do those things anymore. And I was insisting, I was like, no, I'm sure you can. Like the body remembers things, muscle memory, all this other stuff. And she's like, I don't even know if I have the balance. And so it's interesting because I think about how our bodies can change. And so to ask the question, what is left in that muscle memory? Maybe she just hasn't been on a board in a while, and once she gets on one, maybe the balance will come back. I don't know, but in terms of the aging process, she's honoring where she is now, and I'm egging her on. I'm like, yeah, come on, you can do it. And I mean, that's just ego, right, coming into play, and thinking, well, maybe she can, but maybe it will take more practice. It'll take more time. I'm not one to limit people just because they are of a certain age or a certain ability. But what I'd like to do is to recognize where we are now and taking that into account as we travel towards the place we want to be. So if she wants to skate again, my friend, that is, then maybe she starts with standing on a board, and going down the driveway, trying out her balance. I'm not going to send her to the skate park and try to do tricks like ollies and, flipping the board and whatever else that language is. I'm not familiar with the skater language, but yeah, to honor where we are. Okay. So I want to shift gears a little bit and share with you this experience I had recently in a community of women, mixed races, we'll say. There's white women in there, there's women of color. There might be some non-binary folks in there, but they're not very vocal. I'm not sure, but it is open to women and non-binary folks. And so I was talking, I made a post in this group and made an offer to say, hey, there's a program I'm thinking about putting together for writers that help us avoid emotional or vulnerability hangover. Now, when writers write about deep trauma, deep experiences of pain, of hurt, of violation, we go into the same nervous system response that we did at the time of the event. And there are scientific studies. Bessel van der Kolk talks about it in his book, how the body keeps the score. And what happens is when we go into that traumatic response, even if we are just writing about it, our nervous system gets fried. It's just like, zzz, this is happening. Let's go into survival mode. And so I want to offer this program, and I talked a little bit about it last episode. I want to offer this program to writers in helping them build resilience for their nervous systems and to step into self-trust so that they can write these stories without too much emotional or vulnerability hangover. And so I, placed this out into the community and said, would anyone be interested? It would be movement, some meditation, maybe a little bit of magic, ritual, tarot card readings, and the like, stuff like that. And so I got a few folks that were like, yes, oh my God, yes, totally interested, want to do this. Tell me more. This is so important. And yeah, that's, I got thumbs up. I got thumbs up. And then I had one woman put a comment in there, and she she said, not to sound snarky, but what exactly are your qualifications to run a program like this? Now, I will say it is a valid question, right? Because who am I? Who am I to be offering something like this, especially when it comes to topics of trauma, which already put people in a place of vulnerability, right? I get that. But for her to preface the question with, not to sound snarky, but already taints the question that she's asking. So not to sound snarky, but the but doesn't do anything. You're sounding snarky by saying that, right? And I was like, okay, so she wants me to explain myself. She wants me to justify myself. She wants me to prove myself. It's not really a matter of my qualifications. The way she posed the question is basically saying, like, who the heck are you to be doing something like this? And so I recognized that she really wasn't interested in my qualifications. So I just said, hey, if you're interested in the program, come to my free class and you can find out more about me, because I don't feel the need to have to justify myself. If folks are interested, they can decide for themselves if they want to work with me. They can decide, they can do their own due diligence about my qualifications. If they came to the class, they would know, that's how I open my classes. I say, hey, a little bit about myself. This is what I do. Here are my certifications. Here's my experience, et cetera, et cetera. And so, so I left that. And then another person comes in and says, well, it's an excellent question. And it requires a simple and straightforward answer. She was responding to me because she didn't like the fact that I said, come join my class to find out more about me. Didn't like her tone either, because here come the police, right? Here come the justification police. Like, who are you to come in here and do this and blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to step back and ignore them because they're not worth my time. And so I took a step back and I was thinking about it, because the women who were leaving comments were white women, right? And so I'm asking myself, okay, as a woman of color, this feels like they're coming for me. It feels like they see me as a woman of color, and you need to justify yourself. You need to prove yourself to the system that you can actually do this. And this is the problem with that a lot of people of color, not just women, but people of color deal with. It's this feeling of, I'm not good enough, or I'm not qualified enough, or this or that, and yes, people in general have these feelings and beliefs from time to time. But when you live in a system that is designed to oppress you, it is that much harder to not believe that, to get out of that belief system of, well, you're less than unless you can prove to me that you've got your 5 PhDs, that you've got a 6.0 GPA. No such thing as that, but that's just like overachieving number, right? You got to prove to me every credential that you can get before you can even do anything. And this is what paralyzes a lot of people from doing anything. It paralyzes people from taking action in their own lives, from starting the business that they want, from even speaking up. And that is how the system works. That is how systemic racism works. It creates a sense of not worthiness, a sense of fear, and I will not stand for it. I won't. And so I just left it at that. And I thought about it and I was like, okay, do I just leave it be? I'm just going to leave it be because it's not worth my energy and my emotional labor to expend on those women. Because the people who want to work with me will have a conversation with me and they'll ask me like, hey, you know what? I'm really interested, but I'm also kind of wary because this is a big deal. Can you tell me a little bit about the work you do and your experience with that? Cool. Like have a conversation with me. Right. But these white women are just here to come get me. And I'm not dealing with it. So I just left it alone. And, I will say that I was probably spending more mental energy on it than I probably should have. But I was asking myself the question, how am I responding? So this is where the spiritual part comes in to the conversation. I am responding in a certain way to these women's comments. And the question that came up is this a trauma response? For me, yes. Is this also a racist response? Not my response, but them coming for me. Is my perception that 2 white women are challenging me, a woman of color, is my perception that it's racist or based in racism valid? And here's the thing about racism. People of color question ourselves all the time. We've got self-doubt. It's like, oh, am I playing the race card too much? Am I really seeing that? Is this a race thing? I'm not sure. We second guess ourselves, and that that needs to stop. It stops here. It stops now. If you feel that, honor that. Trust your gut, trust your instincts. Don't let people tell you otherwise. So I asked the question, does it feel like these white women are coming for me and asking me, a woman of color, to prove myself? The answer, yes. The answer is yes. Now, I will say the little itty bitty voice in me, which is probably the ego, probably Jake. If you guys are new to the show, Jake is my ego and he's a little Jack Russell Terrier. He's probably saying, well, maybe you should give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they've been hurt. Maybe they are speaking from their own terrible experiences with people, maybe therapists who didn't help them with their own traumas. And they've got a knee-jerk reaction. Okay, I'll take that into account. But did either of them come to my free class to find out more? No, because they're not interested. They just want me to explain myself. And I'm not about to do that. But then, so this is what I decided. And I said, well, the people that showed interest, I will reach out to them and it'll be fine. We'll just move on. But then another white woman pops up onto the thread and says, and tags the original woman who posed the question, not to sound snarky, but what are your qualifications? So this third white woman comes in, tags the original woman and says, excellent question. I think we deserve some transparency here, especially when people are so vulnerable after, when it comes to matters of trauma. And a straightforward answer, and this requires a straightforward answer or something like that. I can't remember word for word. And so I said, okay, so now we've got this. And to myself, I'm saying, we've got this third person asking, okay, I am going to respond now because people are watching, because the folks who commented and said that they're interested in my program are watching. They are watching to see how I respond. They want to see if they want to work with me based on whatever response I give. If it's a non-response, then they'll be like, I don't want to work with this person, because she hides, she got something to hide. And and so it was interesting because internally I was having this conversation. Okay, if we answer and explain and give our qualifications, does that give our power away? Does that fall into the hands of white-splaining? That's not white-splaining. I'm not using that term correctly. Does it fall into the hands of trying to justify yourself, to sounding defensive, to over-explaining yourself and sounding insecure, whatever? Does it play into that? Or does it show that I'm a leader and that I will not take shit? So I said, I'm going to respond and we'll see what happens. So because the question deserved an answer, and I'm sure the folks that were interested would like to know what my qualifications are for offering a program like this. So I answered this third person, this third woman. I said, yes, of course. Here is my straightforward answer. And then I listed all my credentials, 500-hour certified yoga and meditation teacher, 220-hour certified Kundalini yoga teacher, certified breathwork facilitator, all the things. Like, I could go on this list, but I'm not going to do that on the podcast because you guys know me. And if you don't know me, you could go look me up, right? So after I said that, and I also included, that I am a published poet and writer who is a survivor of rape and a survivor of childhood trauma as the child of immigrant parents who fled martial law. There, I write about trauma. I do yoga. I got experience. I have training. I have skills. And then I said, is that enough qualification, or do you need more? And then I said, the reason I'm asking this question is because how do we know when someone is qualified? Who gets to decide when your qualifications are enough? And I said, as folks of color, like myself, there is this need and expectation for us to go above and beyond to prove ourselves worthy, to prove ourselves smart enough, to prove ourselves that we can do the things that we say that we can. Meanwhile, white folks, they don't have to do that. And so I said, yeah, so here you go. There you go. There's my answer. And then I circled back to the original person who posted the question about qualifications, with her preface of not sounding snarky, which already lends itself to that. And I said, and for the record, I said, to be clear, I'm not offering therapy. I am not asking for people to share their traumas. I'm offering movement and meditation and ritual as ways to create resilience in our nervous systems and to build self-trust. That's what I'm doing. So before you get all of your panties in a wad, read the post clearly first before you all come after me. And then I said at the end, to circle back to that original post, the original comment by that first white woman, I said, prefaces like, not to sound snarky, but already lend themselves to doing the thing that you're trying to disclaim. Something very similar to that is, not to sound racist, but when someone has to preface what they're about to say with phrases like that, it tells you that that's the thing that they're actually doing, right? And then I said, if the question were asked directly, then maybe an answer would have been given directly. But because it was, not to sound snarky, but who wants to answer that question? Right? That's not a very inviting way of posing the question. Not to sound snarky, but like, who the hell are you? Because that's exactly what the question was. Who the hell are you? You think a person wants to respond to that? My response would be like, well, who the hell are you to ask me that question in the first place? So then the third person just said, thank you for your response. And she left it. Good, good. There you go. So I tell you this whole story because there's a few things happening here. Okay, we've got the issue of race coming into play, where we've got white women trying to come after a woman of color to prove herself worthy of whatever it is that I'm doing. It's like, that's my business. You don't want part of it, move away. But then there's so that's sort of the activist piece of it. Now, the spiritual piece of it is, for me, trusting my own inner knowing, trusting my intuition, trusting myself, and not second guessing, like, am I playing the race card too much? No, never. So also, from the spiritualist perspective, to look at these women and say, okay, why are they like this? Why are they responding in this way? Why are they coming at me in this way? And I said it earlier, it's like, perhaps they were wounded badly by a previous experience with someone who did not care for them, for someone who may have re-traumatized them. Maybe they're, feeling extra raw from that experience and take it upon themselves to police everybody else who's trying to do some good in the world. And so as a spiritualist, I can choose to engage or not engage. And I chose to engage, but in a way that felt in integrity to me, that it did not feel like I was defensive. I was answering the question, but I was not defensive. I also stood my ground and called them out on their shit, because you don't come after me. You don't. It's not nice, but also you don't know who you're messing with, right? So spirituality is not all kumbaya. It's not all like, oh, we are all one. We are all one, but we are in these human physical bodies, and we are here to help each other grow. And sometimes helping other people grow, helping each other grow, looks hard. It looks like conflict. It looks like challenge. And that's okay. I could be all like, we are all one. But if you're going to treat me like shit, I am not going to take it. I'm not going to stand for it. I have boundaries, and you need to understand those boundaries. And if that offends you, then that's yours to work through and grow from. Right. So it's just funny because visually, I just imagine all of us sort of like walking around on the planet in our little bubbles, and then we just bump into each other. Right. Our bubbles bump into each other. And then we either get mad or we get excited that we made contact. Now, sometimes the force of those bubbles coming into each other breaks the bubble or breaks the boundary. And then what happens? Then do we throw up our arms and be like, how could you burst my bubble? I can't believe you, right? Or can it be, oh, this is different. Okay, what just happened? What information can I get from this? Can I learn something from this? Can I create a new bubble? Maybe the new bubble went from a clear bubble to now it's like slightly blue. That would be really cool. Like we have these plastic bubbles, and then they like change colors with every moment of contact we make with another person. And then we soon collect like all these colors and have a rainbow bubble. I don't know. I just think about that. That sounds really cool as far as a visual indicator of our spiritual growth. So yeah, so we've got those two coming together, right? So we've got we've got the activist, like intense, like, I'm not going to stand for this. And then we've got the spiritual, where we then inquire. We inquire deeply within ourselves, because earlier I said, is this a trauma response for me? Because my nervous system was activated. Yeah, I've got a resilient nervous system, right? But it doesn't mean I'm immune to a response. Our sympathetic nervous system is designed to activate anytime we feel threatened, anytime we feel danger. It's a matter of how can we allow ourselves that experience without sizzling the nerve endings, without going, frying them. How can we build resilience? So resilience is this, what I like to think of this thing as like elasticity, right? It's almost like this, I just imagine the myelin sheath being this like really clear and malleable surface that keeps our nerves protected, and it sort of like wobbles around when we have resilience. When we don't have resilience, it thins out and the nerve goes, So even though I have worked on building resilience in my nervous system, doesn't mean I don't get activated. So I was activated, by these women. I was like, oh my God, like, who are they? Why are they coming after me? And so I was asking myself, okay, what is this trauma response? It is a trauma response, but what is it a response to? What's the trauma? And so the trauma is the questioning, are you who you say you are? Because we don't believe you. We need you to prove who you are. We need you to show us all of your degrees, all of your identification cards, all of your credentials, show us your report cards from like 3rd grade, so that we can see that you are smart enough, that you're worthy, and that you can deliver this program. It's almost like they were the program police, like, who are you? We didn't see your application come in. And so flashbacks from childhood came in, not in a way that that felt like I was literally reliving them, but it was just these small moments of like, oh yeah, I remember that time where someone questioned me and said, did you write this paper? Are you sure you didn't plagiarize it? Because they couldn't believe that I wrote that well, that I even spoke English that well. And I'm like, hello, I was born here in the States. Yeah. Okay. So those little things got triggered. And so I was like, oh, this is the trauma response. This is what is happening. It's these moments that we forget, but the body never forgets. And when an external event happens that feels familiar, the body goes, oh, we know this. We know this. Look, they're coming after us. They want us to prove ourselves. What are we going to do? We're going to hide under the desk. We're going to pull out our file of, scholarly papers. Are we going to pull out our hours of training that we did with various teachers, spiritual teachers, yoga teachers, even if those yoga teachers are not in integrity? You can check out a previous episode about that. I mean, really, what do qualifications do? Like, okay, I don't want to get into it too much, but if you think about certifications, right? What are they exactly? You go through something and then you get a piece of paper, right? But are you really doing the work? How do you know? How do you know someone's done the work? So for example, I am certified in breath work as taught by David Elliott. I spent a week with him in upstate New York at Omega Institute. Beautiful place, by the way. Highly recommend it. Spent a week with him with a group, and we went in deep with learning how to not only practice this breath work, but to facilitate it, to hold space, to know what to do if someone's having a certain kind of reaction or response. A whole week. And when I say a whole week, it was 6 days, from 9 to 6 or something like that, 9 to 5. And then I got a little certificate, right, that says, hey, you completed this training with David Elliott. Awesome. But then there are people out there who are also certified breathwork facilitators, and they take a training that is like 3 hours long. They're taught the physiological practice of it, maybe given like a half hour on the emotional, spiritual part of it. But many of them are not taught how to hold space, how to hold sacred space where people feel held and feel safe. And so what happens is that these people just, who are the students, get re-traumatized. They open up, and then the facilitator doesn't know how to close the circle, doesn't know how to close the energy. And so everyone's walking around like an exposed nerve. But that person's certified, right? So certification doesn't always guarantee that you're going to get a good teacher or a good facilitator. It really is up to us as individuals to do our research, to get to know the person, to find out more about them beyond just a piece of paper. So all that to say is, I could have all the certifications in the world and I could be a really like piss poor facilitator. I could be awful, and that's one of the reasons why I resisted initially responding to that snarky woman's request for qualifications. Because what are qualifications, right? Do your due diligence, do your research, ask, have a conversation with people. And so it is a matter of us being who we are at our essence and showing up as that all the time. Because I know people who are amazing at holding space, amazing at facilitating some deep practices, and they don't have any certifications. They didn't go to yoga school, for example. So everyone has their own gifts. We don't need external validation. We don't need a piece of paper to say, hey, this is what I did. I mean, it helps for some folks to get that, because there are businesses who are very scared of liability. And I get that. I mean, we live in a world where people need quote unquote proof, like physical, three-dimensional proof. So, do what you need to do, but know that if you are seeking somebody to work with, certifications aren't always the bar by which to rate a person or determine whether you'll work with them or not. So yeah, and I just want to say that this is really about going within and asking yourself, what am I seeking? What am I looking to do? What is my purpose in life? And how can I get there? How can I do that thing in a way that feels aligned, in a way that flows, and helping the people that I'm meant to help? How do I listen to my inner self, and try to block out those people, so that is what I wanted to share with all of you for this episode, as this story is an illustration of having spirituality and activism and just racial awareness in general coming together, using our spiritual practices as a way to inquire about the things that are happening in our lives. Not to get obsessive about it, like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is it? I mean, yeah, ask, why is this happening? What can I learn from this? But to move in that direction with a sense of wonder and curiosity, not obsession, not like fixation, like, I gotta know the answer. That doesn't really help. It's more an observation, an invitation to get curious about what lessons might be weaving in some of these difficult challenges of life, or even the good ones. When good things happen, ask yourself, oh, this happened. I wonder what the message is there. Now, there might not be a message in everything, but you will know when you are pressed or when something feels activating, that there is a growth moment, a growth edge there. And so get curious about it and ask yourself, am I going to move forward? Am I going to take the leap into that growth spurt? Because you always have a choice. You can choose to stay in your safe zone and stay back. It's like, oh, yeah, no, you know what? I'm just going to stay over here. Like, what I could have done with that whole discussion was I could have just opted out of any engagement. I could have shut down the post. I could have closed any more commenting. I could have blocked and deleted those women's comments. I could have done any of that stuff, but that doesn't help me grow. It keeps me safe. It makes me feel like, okay, I'm held, but can I hold myself as I'm moving through that really tight birth canal of growth? It's like, ooh, this is uncomfortable. I don't like it. I don't like it. But I know that I got myself. I got it. I can keep myself safe. I just know exactly what feels good for me and how far I can go in that discomfort before it starts to turn to excruciating pain, right? We want to learn that line between excruciating pain and just discomfort. You don't want to harm yourself. You don't want to re-traumatize yourself. We need to be kind to ourselves, because a lot of people out there are not kind to us. And so if we're going to be our own best friends, let's learn a little kindness, a little gentleness, and we can still grow. It'll be uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to hurt. You know what I mean? Okay. All right, cool. All right, my friends. Whew. I hope this was, I don't want to say enlightening, because people say that a lot, but that's the word that comes to mind, because it's what I'm doing is I'm shining a light on some things that folks may or may not be paying attention to. Right. So yeah, so I hope it's enlightening. Okay. So I am going to read a poem from The World I Leave You. I really love this anthology, and I'm going to see if I can get one of the editors on as a guest, because it would be so wonderful to talk to them about how they came about curating. Well, first of all, the idea of the anthology and how they came to curate the poems. So who knows? Maybe a future episode we'll hear from Leah Silvius or Lee Herrick. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so randomly selecting a poem. This, let's see, is a long poem. So we'll go with on the facing page, Shin Yu Pai's poem, Easter Sunday. This morning, my husband shaves the lawn. The grass trimmer, choking up before the yard, is fully manicured. We keep our shoes on at our neighbor's flat. Mondi and Paschal greetings. Pascal greetings. Traditions we leave behind in Anatoly. At the host table, someone counts the number of skeptics out at sunrise. Clipping the green while overheard from the kitchen. I decided to give up Lent for Lent. Not one to be outdone, the native scribbler shows off her sculpting chops in yellow marshmallow tableau, the memoir of her characters retold through sugar-spun rabbits, a gelatin hostess gift for the vegetarian mistress of the household, indelible, while tomorrow marks the start of Rwandan Genocide Memorial Week. Remembering 8 days into April, the poet of Boston's Joy Street, who imagined a new cross in the wind, a communion where we are altered by another's charity, taken aback by the soft push of breath against a cheek. Oh, these poems are so good. I highly recommend that y'all get a copy of this anthology ASAP. All right, my friends. So We'll close this episode as we always do with the divine light in me bows to the divine light in you. Until next time, namaste.